Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the online public consultation meeting to discuss the future planning policies for the St. Pat's Alexandra site. My name is Kate McDonald. I was born and raised in Jabuktuk. I am a facilitator, community activist, educator, artist, parent, and I'm pleased to be here and to facilitate this conversation between the community, the municipality, and Jono Developments, the new property owner of the school site. As you are aware, due to COVID-19 restrictions and social distancing requirements, this meeting will be held virtually. For those who connected to the meeting via phone, please be aware that there will be a 40 to 60-second delay between what you hear on the phone and what you see on the webcast online. We recommend that you follow the presentation slides linked on the website instead of connecting to the webcast. If you experience any technical difficulties, please email planhrm@halifax.ca or put a comment in the chat and we will do our best to help you. Slide 3, please. Before we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq First Nations people. HRM acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. As an African Nova Scotian person, my ancestors arrived here over 400 years ago. We were placed on lands that were not considered desirable. We shared language, skills, and knowledge with the Indigenous people here. It's important for me to name that, and my responsibility to uphold these treaties is ongoing and ancestral. I encourage folks to think about how their identity interacts with this land. How did you arrive to be here? How do you honor the treaties? What is your relationship to this land? And how are we cultivating relationships with this land in a reciprocal way? It's a gift to be here in Mi'kma'ki with the ocean in our backyards and the rich gifts of nature around us. How do we treat this place with honor in the spirit of peace and friendship? Slide 4, please. We would also like to affirm that we are in the decade for people of African descent. African Nova Scotians are a distinct founding people in our community who have been a key part of Nova Scotian culture and history. We acknowledge that African teachings, strength, and perseverance continue to challenge and inspire our community. Slide 5, please. I would like to welcome everyone into this space with us to discuss a community gem, the St. Pat's Alexandra site and its future. I recognize that development is a very sensitive subject, especially in regard to the North End right now. And we're hoping today that we can hear from community in meaningful ways to influence the design of this site and highlight what might be important for this site to hold from a community perspective. I also want to acknowledge that a conversation about the future of this site has been taking place for about 10 years, and community members have already invested a lot of time and effort into this conversation. The school has been very important to the Indigenous, African Nova Scotian, and wider North End community. At this juncture, the community can still influence what will happen on the site, and both the municipality and Jono Developments are here to listen to your voices. While no decisions will be made tonight, we want to hear from you. What values would you like to see reflected in the development of this site? How can it best serve the community in the years to come? Slide 6, please. In terms of agenda, we have 2 presentations planned for this evening, one from planning staff and one from the property owner. But we want to dedicate the bulk of the meeting to your questions and comments. So I will be the facilitator, but also the timekeeper. Kasha Toda, principal planner with HRM Planning and Development, will present on how the zoning for the site fits the center plan process and how council will make a decision on any potential changes. After Kasha's presentation, we will hear from the property owners, Jono Developments, on what they would like to achieve, how they've worked with the community, and why they are requesting zoning changes for the site through the center plan process. Each presentation will be roughly 12 minutes long. We will begin the public Q&A part of the meeting, starting with those who signed up to speak first, and then moving on to the online Q&A. A recording of the meeting and a summary of feedback will also be posted at centerplan.ca, or we can email or mail it to you. Slide 7, please. I would like to introduce the HRM staff and presenters who are here with us today. Tracy Jones-Grant, Manager with the HRM Office of Diversity and Inclusion / African Nova Scotian Affairs, as well as Senior Diversity Advisors Ayo Aladejebi, Cheryl Kopeg-Jihu, and Mepfumo Chidzonga are here with us. We would like to thank the office for supporting us in this engagement process. Kasha Toda, Principal Planner with Planning and Development, will provide the staff presentation. Dali Sally and Brandon Umferville are planners who will help us manage the Q&A to the right of your screen. And Joe Metledge, Jono Developments, and Roddy Small, Director of the One North End Community Economic Development Society, will deliver a joint presentation. Slide 8, please. Recognizing the challenging times caused by the current pandemic, we appreciate your willingness to join us here in the virtual format. We also want to thank all of those who've already participated in stakeholder meetings, an ongoing survey, or recent HRM pop-ups in the North Branch Library. We will go over logistics on how to participate later in the meeting, but a quick note that you can call into the phone line and speak if you registered in advance. Please press *6 to mute your phone and press *6 to unmute when you are called to speak. Our producer, Deanne, can also mute phones to avoid background noise. For those watching online, please feel free to type questions into the Q&A on the right side of this online meeting under My Questions, as indicated on the screen. You can mark your question private if you do not want it to be shared with the wider audience. Otherwise, they will be shared in the Featured tab and will be a part of public record. Planning staff will do their best to answer questions in both the My Questions and Featured tab of the Q&A. If we have time, the questions will also be read at the end of the meeting. We kindly ask that everyone respect all points of view and opinions. We'll do our best to respond to as many questions as possible tonight, but if we run out of time, please email your questions and comments. We will be providing a summary of the comments and responses to frequently asked questions after tonight's meeting on the website. I will now turn it over to Kasha for her presentation. Slide 9, please.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you everyone who was able to join us tonight. My presentation, as Kate indicated, will focus on the planning policies linked to the St. Patrick's Alexandra site and how this consultation tonight fits with the central plan planning process. So central plan is a comprehensive planning process for the urban area of HRM, also called Regional Centre, initiated by Council in 2015. The goal is to update our current plans and policies. We currently have 4 of those, and some of them are dating back to 1970s, and develop one plan and one land use bylaw for Halifax Peninsula and Dartmouth within the circumferential highway. This consultation is part of this comprehensive process as directed by Council and is not based on a site-specific application. Slide 10, please. This map illustrates the area being considered as part of central plan, and the general land use area is also called urban structure. The plan is being adopted in 2 phases. Package A was approved by Council in September of 2019, and we are currently in the process of consulting on Package B. Slide 11, please. The central plan is focused on the following core concepts: complete communities, human scale design, pedestrians first, and strategic growth. Ultimately, it is about deciding what are the right places to grow. And typically, those are places close to transit and services. Slide 12, please. I would now like to speak in more detail about the St. Patrick's Alexandra site. Slide 13, please. As Kate mentioned, St. Patrick's Alexandra School is a significant site in Halifax's North End with a lot of history. It is almost 4 acres large, and is bounded by the Brunswick Street, Maitland Street, the Murray-Warrington Park, and also St. George's Church. The land for the school was originally assembled by the St. Patrick's Catholic Parish, and the St. Patrick's Boys' School was built in 1921. In 1971, an addition fronting Maitland Street was also constructed. The school served many generations of students in the Halifax North End, including students from Uniacke Square, and a Black community in the north end of Halifax. St. Patrick's Alexandra School was also one of the few schools in Nova Scotia to pioneer Afrocentric learning. Slide 14, please. The site is also located in close proximity to the Aikens House National Historic Site and is also adjacent to two provincially designated heritage properties, the St. Patrick's Church and St. George's Round Church. It is also located on Brunswick Street, which has for a long time been considered a heritage streetscape and is now proposed under Centre Plan to be part of the Old North Suburb Heritage Conservation District. As is well known in community, through the late 1990s and early 2000s, attendance at the school has drastically dropped, and in 2011, the Halifax Regional School Board closed the school and transferred the land to the municipality. The land was declared surplus by the municipality and decision was made to sell the site. The sale of the process lasted a number of years, but it was completed in April of 2020, and the land is currently owned by General Developments. No development application, rezoning, or plan amendment application has been received by the municipality at this time. Slide 15, please. This slide again illustrates some of the context of the site and the current zoning, which is higher order residential 1. Again, it's located next to the Murray Warrington Park, where Hope Blooms is located, as is well known in the community. It is adjacent to several historic sites and churches, and a largely low-rise historic streetscape of Brunswick Street. A notable exception are the Harbourview apartments. On Maitland Street, the property is across the street from a number of parking lots and mid-rise properties. Under Centre Plan Package A, approved by Council a year ago, the site was rezoned from Parks Institutional to High Order Residential 1, HR1 zone, which generally permits multi-unit residential uses. Slide 16, please. I would like to again acknowledge the extensive community engagement that occurred as part of previous municipal and community consultations and engagement, and the investment that members of the community made in shaping the future of the site. This is exemplified by some of the reports indicated on the slide from HR staff reports, the North Central Community Council, Cities Environment Unit, Social Innovation Lab for African Nova Scotia Youth Opportunities, and the Road to Economic Prosperity Africa Nova Scotia Economic Action Plan. These are just some of the reports that we are aware of. Also, General Developments has independently engaged the community, and I believe they will speak to that in their presentation. Slide 17, please. Previous community feedback centered on ensuring that any future development creates a beautiful, inclusive, safe, and affordable space where the physical and cultural identity of the community is recognized and celebrated. Some of the other key themes included maintaining the site for community uses, celebrating the physical and cultural identity of the community, programming for diverse needs, integrating and connect the site into the fabric of the community. Slide 18, please. We also heard that the members of the community deeply valued public spaces, both adjacent, such as the Murray Warrington Park, and also public space that could be created on the site. We also heard about promoting healthy lifestyles through the design of the site, providing for a range of housing options and services, and creating a multi-use community space or facility that in particular addresses the economic, cultural, and educational needs of the Indigenous Mi'kmaq and African Nova Scotia communities, and also developing a mixed-use, vibrant development on the site. Slide 19, please. So before we consider potential zoning changes, it is important to understand what the current zoning permits. Under Centre Plan Package A, the site has been zoned as Higher Order Residential 1, which allows some of the following. The development approval can occur through site plan approval process. This is essentially an as-of-right process where development permit can be issued if all the requirements of the land use bylaw are met, there's also an additional required to proceed through a design review process as well and meet the design requirements of the land use bylaw. The zone residential and some commercial and institutional uses on the site, but 75% has to be maintained as residential with a mix of unit types. The maximum height is 14 meters, which is approximately 4 stories. There's also a requirement that any development includes over 2,000 square meters, includes incentive or bonus zoning public benefits. There are also a requirement to set back from the Murray-Warrington Park and also to meet a shadow performance standard to maintain light on the park. The land use bylaw also has a range of other requirements such as parking, landscaping, and amenity space for the residents of the new development. Center plan for all large sites, such as this one, provides an option for a large site development agreement, which could modestly increase the height of the development by about 1 story and have some additional flexibility. Center plan also includes a policy to allow for heritage development agreements for registered heritage buildings, which is not the case on the site at this moment. Slide 20, please. So just to get back to the purpose of the meeting, one of the key reasons for this consultation is that in September 2019, the Regional Council, following public hearing on Center Plan Package A, directed staff to explore a potential change in zoning from Higher Order Residential 1 to Higher Order Residential 2 as part of Center Plan Package B. This change could provide for some additional commercial rights and a possible increase in height for up to a maximum of 38 meters or 12 stories. It is important to note that under Center Plan, any change in height typically would require an amendment to the plan and therefore needs to be carefully considered. As there's currently no development or plan amendment application on the site, staff have not reviewed any detailed proposals from the property owners. However, based on concept plans, which we believe will be shared later on tonight, the general concept appears to seek a mix of High Order Residential 2 and Center 2 zoning, which is a more intense zone than HR2. Slide 21, please. So here for clarity is another comparison of the High Order Residential 1 and High Order Residential 2 zones based on approved Center Plan policies. So HR1 right now permits up to 14 meters or 4 stories. There is policy that could consider large sites such as this to have a height of up to 26 meters or 8 stories. But due to location of the site in the proposed heritage district, the height typically is lower in those areas, hence the 14 meters. Again, up to 75% of the at least 75% of the area has to be developed for residential uses with a mix of unit types, and 25% can be commercial or institutional. The HR2 zone also would then permit up to 38 meters or 12 stories with a similar land use mix. Slide 22, please. So one of the key questions in front of us tonight is what type of density or build form may be appropriate for the site. And this slide shows examples of some typical mid-rise buildings, which are typically up to 6 stories, tall mid-rise buildings, and high-rise buildings, which include the tower form. Slide 23, please. As we know, during previous engagements, community members indicated the importance of a broader public or community benefits that should be tied to development of the site. Community benefits are also closely linked on the density of future development. And any development can provide certain benefits such as new housing, retail spaces, open spaces. And while in cities, in other parts of Canada and also United States, other cities have tools for securing broad community benefits under provincial legislation, the HM Charter. HRM may only require a limited type of community benefits by using the incentive or bonus zoning tool or development agreements. These are important tools which ensure that public benefits can be enforced on the site. HRM is currently not able to enforce third-party agreements between a landowner and community members or organizations. However, broad community benefits are identified as a priority under the new African Nova Scotian Economic Action Plan. Under Central Plan, any development over 2,000 square meters is required to contribute to certain public benefits, and 60% of the value of public benefits must include money for affordable housing. Next slide, please. So just to speak to public benefits in a little more detail, under approved Central Plan policies, the following benefits can be considered, and most of them can only be accepted as money in lieu due to enforcement. So money for affordable housing, this can be either new or rehabilitated renovations made by community nonprofits, heritage conservation, public art, improvements or new land for municipal parks, and affordable community or cultural indoor space. I would also like to mention that as recently as this past September, Regional Council established a reserve to collect funds from this from community benefits in the regional center, as well as a detailed grants program for how the money can be distributed to community nonprofits in all of the categories listed. Although the benefits do not need to be spent on the site of development, they do have to be directed within the regional center and ideally within the proximity of the new development. Slide 25, please. So finally, just to conclude the presentation, I would like to speak to what are some of the things that planning staff will consider when evaluating this request to consider zoning change during Central Plan Package B. First and foremost, Council Direction of September 19th, 2019, community feedback. So what we hear from you at this meeting, but also through community surveys, the pop-ups, correspondence, and stakeholder meetings. So this is only part of the larger consultation process, of course. We are also looking carefully at site conditions and community context. And we will also be guided by Central Plan policies, in particular the urban structure map, mobility considerations under Integrated Mobility Plan, the zoning and height framework policies, which are included in package in the Central Plan. Also policies related to proposed heritage conservation districts, which typically maintain density in those areas fairly low. Also Halifax citadel ramparts, and also other planning considerations that may be applicable to the site. So a decision to either maintain current zoning or to change it will be presented to Council as part of Central Plan Package B adoption process, and a public hearing will be held in the second half of 2021. So this completes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I believe that we will hold off on questions until later, but I would now like to turn over to Kate. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kasia. I would now like to introduce Joe Metlich, the owner of Jana Development and the current owner of the St. Patrick's Alexandra site. Joe will present with Rodney Small, the director of the One North End Community Economic Development Society, with whom he has worked with on the site. They will also have about 15 minutes to present. So Kasia took 15 minutes and we'll give them the same allotted amount of time. Joe and Rodney, please unmute yourselves by pressing *6 and please start your presentation.
Testing, testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And see, there's a delay here, and obviously, you know, I'm trying to manage it through the presentation in the phone. But I guess when we ask you to click the slide, you can just go click the slide from there. It will be me presenting today. So my name is Rodney Small. I am the director of the One North End Community Economic Development Society, as Kate was just saying. And I have been working with Joe Metlich and Norm Nahas of Juno Development around what we will be presenting here today for the development of the site, and that will be around a community benefit agreement that we are trying to present in order to offset some of the injustices that we've faced over the years growing up in the community as African Nova Scotians. So on that note, I would ask you to go into the presentation, so to the next page, so slide number 27.
I agree. I think that's what made me share the story on social media, was that it was a positive story.
Thank you very much. So I guess that took us to slide 30. So today, like I said moments ago, I will be presenting on the St. Pat's Alexandra development site around a community benefit myself and others in the community have been working on over the last 6 years, specifically Juno Development. And what I want to point out is this is actually the vision of our youth, and you will see that through this presentation as the One North End has taken it upon themselves to engage our community in a meaningful way. And we approach these engagements from the most vulnerable positions in our community, and that happen to be African Nova Scotians who, based on the statistics, we knew were not only underemployed in many situations, but also being incarcerated at alarming rates and dropping out of high school at alarming rates. So going back to that whole notion of that road to economic prosperity, I want you all to know that we are definitely aligned with that their perspective. Please go to the next slide.
So we felt, rather than put him for another 2-hour ride.
So as you see here, the references that we will be using throughout these slides would be the engagements that the One North End Community Economic Development Society have done within the North End of Halifax over the last 6 years. We started these conversations, as I said moments ago, with our youth. So we started our conversations at our local community-wide, to be quite frank, and we carried those conversations out to our junior high schools, specifically Oxford in Highland Park. Those are the schools that happen to serve our lower income communities. And when I say our lower income communities within the North End, I am specifically talking about the Uni-X Square in Mulgrave Park. So we've also been doing extensive work around the employment gap that we have seen over the generations. And one of the things that I want to point out is that our province has been committed to closing that employment gap, and they have been committed through their poverty reduction strategy. And we have been running what has been well known as the African Nova Scotian Social Innovation Employment Lab, which both Joe and Norm are members of our current advisory committee, and you'll hear about that later on in the presentation. And well, we also have a public report out on that work that has taken place in 2019. So please don't hesitate to take some time to review that report. Lots of great information in there, and it comes literally from the African Nova Scotian voice themselves. So it's first person voice lab that we've been delivering, and it's important that we carry that voice forward. So this is not our voice, this is the voice of the community. Next slide, please.
Hello.
Hello, next slide.
Hello, can anyone
Sorry.
hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know who this is. Hello.
This is Kathy Light calling, and thank you for your presentation.
Hi, Kathy. You're sorry you're interrupting it right now. There's probably a technical difficulty. I'm actually presenting as you're speaking. I'm very sorry. So if I'm going to continue because I don't know if the people can hear me on here. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm trying my best to make sure that we get the information that needs to be put out there. So I'm sorry in any case for the technical difficulties you're experiencing. What I will tell you is this is not my session. This session is being led by the municipality. So there's not much I can do there. So you have to speak to them about any technical difficulties. Sorry for the interruption, people. Obviously, we've been having technical difficulties. So one of the things I wanted to point out are the opportunity areas within this community benefit agreement that we've been working so adamantly to put forth amongst our council in order to change the legislation to make this work for the people, long-withstanding members of the community that displacement has been a part of their history, and we just need to point no farther than Africville in order to kind of mention some of those things. But one of the primary things that we heard through the last 6 years in engaging our community is the ability to create startup space in order to start really developing our own businesses. These were something that we heard even from our young
what have
kids.
You done?
This is something we even heard from our young kids in our junior high schools. And one of the things that they were well aware of is the changing of our business district in the North End. And they even realized that the business district was not representative of the population being served. And in many instances, we heard conversations from those young people in which they didn't even feel welcomed in those businesses, and nor did they feel that they even could work in these places. And these are businesses that are, operating in their community. So I just wanted to point those things out. So startup space was always a very important concept from the very beginning, something we heard from community members. Next slide, please. Hello.
The next slide is up, Rodney.
Perfect. It just took a second to come across on the computer there. Thank you, Kate.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next slide you'll see here that what we have as an opportunity area is retail space. So one of the things that I just mentioned is the fact that our business district has changed drastically from the 50s into the 80s, right into the 90s, to what we see basically a transformation in what we could easily point the finger and say is gentrification. Like I said moments ago, even our young people have seen this transformation, and what we understand is if we want to have a business district representative of the population that it serves, under the current rates in our community, it's very hard for a startup to be able to afford space. So to have this built in to the design of the property and offer this as an opportunity area to help create, or should I say, recreate a business district representative of the population it serves is extremely important. There was times where we had places that we could frequent as far as to socialize and be together, and these places are just no longer there, and this is a very important concept into the agreement itself. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the things that is really important in our community and always has been important in the African Nova Scotian community, and that's arts and music. We have arts and performance here because performance is a way that we really relinquish who we are. And we also have the garden area. I think it's really important to create these types of green spaces because the more we start to see urban sprawl, the less green spaces we have. And green spaces are important. But more important for us here and with our culture is the fact to have that place to innovate. If we're talking about entrepreneurship, innovation is a very important part of entrepreneurship. So to have a place where we can actually innovate, and how we innovate in our community is through literally arts and music. So we need a place to be able to really be ourselves and enhance our culture in a way that we can share with the rest of the world. And it's really important. The thing about the garden area is we want to be able to create opportunities to partner with other like-minded nonprofit organizations that really align with supporting the collective impact strategy, and ultimately aligns with one of those reports that probably ended up on the shelf like most reports do, sad enough to say, but the irony report. At one point in time, it was the end all to say all in this province. Now it seems like it's lying up on the shelves, but at the end of the day, we want to definitely be creating those healthy relationships in our community instead of creating a gated community, a more accessible and open community that is welcome to everybody and all. Next slide, please.
Hi, Rodney. You don't need to
Hi.
wait. There's a delay, and I know that, but if you have the PDF, we're actually keeping up with you. So you don't have to wait for the slides if you have another way to read the information and keep up with yourself.
Slide?
Yeah.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll bring up my own presentation because I have this presentation, and then that
Beautiful.
way I can just keep it rolling.
Yeah,
Perfect.
you can just
Thank
keep it
you
rolling
very
because we're
much for that, Kate.
of course. And I want to
'cause
also
I
let
was-
you, your time has been
Okay,
paused also,
perfect.
Rodney. I got you. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm bringing up the presentation myself, so I'll just go through that.
Okay,
now. I
great.
just
And
wanna
you
make sure.
start when you are ready. And we are, for your reference, on 32. That's the slide that you have up. I do believe 32, 33, sorry, 33, affordable and accessible housing.
Got it. Okay,
Great.
and I'm rolling
Beautiful.
with it now, so then I won't go with the delays anymore.
No,
that
not-
way. Thank you very much, Kate. Appreciate it.
course.
You're making this. Hey, I love your skills. Can't even lie. Making this so
All
good.
right. Take it away, Rodney.
Oh, perfect. So now we'll have the what you'll see here is the affordable housing slide. I'll let you guys know that I'm no longer going to be on that delay. I'm looking at my own presentation. So if I am going too fast, I will ask that Kate, you just interrupt me and let me know that you're going too fast for everybody to keep up. But I definitely want to make sure that we get through the presentation so that we get to really highlight the opportunity areas that will come out about in creating a community benefit agreement on this site. So affordable and accessible housing. I think the key word here is accessibility. We hear affordable over and over again, but the way our markets are being driven, there's no possible way that anybody from my community or anybody perhaps living in poverty would be able to afford the rent increases that are happening within our city. These are things that we have to pay close attention to, and at the end of the day, affordability needs to definitely be attached to accessibility, because in many cases, based on market, something could be called affordable, but it doesn't mean that it's accessible. So it's really important that we create initiatives that really align with government mandates in order to support affordable and accessible housing, to ensure that our long-withstanding community members are not being displaced. It's really important that we work closely with our neighbors in order to create affordable and accessible housing. The next slide, what you'll see there is, and you're probably saying, how does tourism and a woonarf. What is a woonarf? Well, a quick Google search, a woonarf will show you it's really a place where we can all come together, work, play, and live. Whether you're in a wheelchair or you're driving a bike or a car or simply walking, this place will be welcoming for each and every one of us. And it's really important that we create safe, loving, and beautiful communities in that manner, and don't create spaces which kind of point us against each other simply because you drive a bike and I drive a car. I think it's really important that we create spaces in which we will be able to get along together. Well, I think one of the things that we really got to point out here is tourism. When we're talking about employment and attaching to the economy, and we're talking about road to economic prosperity, well, we have to identify the areas in which there is actually prosperity, and tourism is one of those areas. So one of the things that we are well aware of is that, well, tourism is a huge market right now. In fact, $2 billion market, right? And I think it's an untapped market for African Nova Scotians. And I think one of the things that we'll be able to do is start tapping into that market, because if you all are not aware, we have a very famous Canadian that's highlighted on a $10 bill, okay, that actually had literally note of the world. So it's the most popular note in the world right now, and it's a great opportunity for us to tap into tourism and bring it within our community. For all those that may not know, highlighted on the back of that $10 bill is the north end of Halifax. So great opportunity to tap into tourism and start supporting the closing that gap, but most importantly, that road to economic prosperity that I'm hearing HRM screaming earlier on in their presentation. Be more than happy to hold you to that. Next, the next slide, you'll see, I love this one, because one of the things that we've identified, and I think has been identified through many different engagements, not just our engagement, is the fact that we lived in a food desert. I mean, we've even explored different ideas. We had the carrot on Scotian Street. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But ultimately, to bring a grocer into our community is nothing less than genius. It first and foremost provides access to healthy food. It brings jobs into our community so that we can start connecting them to our young people. We have some great nonprofit organizations in our community working with our young people who already have great relations with these grocers. So it really fits the profile. But more importantly, if you have a grocery store, well, you require parking. So what I'll say is that this grocery store is not going to be a 24-hour grocery store. In fact, it will go against the contrary. And one of the things that we are well aware of is that parking is a hot button item in our community. We have our ears to the ground, and we know that there's a potential, literally a potential, there's a potential, excuse me there, but there's a potential, there was potential feedback from the last center plan engagement in which, you know, there was a petition, sorry, I was lost for words there for a minute, a petition sitting on, literally as we speak, sitting on the shelf somewheres due to the parking issue. So I really wanted to point that out as we really took the time to really listen and figure out how we can chime in and support that conversation in a healthy way. So lo and behold, that takes us to the next slide. And what you'll see here is the rendering, AKA the concept. And I want to point out that everything starts with a concept or a simple idea. But what I wanted to point out here is that this idea and this concept and this rendering may have been put forth and paid for by Juno Development. But what I want to point out is everything in this rendering that you see is what would have been heard from our youth and carried out to the point that we have this visual in front of us today. Right in front of us, you'll see a community startup center. If you kind of go behind that's the art center. Well, that whole space in itself, if you kind of go over to the left, you see cafe. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cafe, but that captures the essence of a retail space that will be offered for African Nova Scotians so that we can develop that business district that is representative of the long withstanding population that has been served.
Roger, you have about 2 minutes left, okay?
Thank you very much, Kate. But
yeah,
what I wanted to point out is how that building is staggered and the architectural design in which that building is staggered. Because that building is staggered for a reason, and that reason is that we don't want to put shade on that park in which we now call Hope Blooms. That's very important to us. Takes us to the next slide. This is the Brunswick Street view per se. And if you look further down Brunswick Street, it's really hard to see, but that's where we'll have our grocery store. And by the way, if you kind of look right straight in front of you, we're actually salvaging the old building that is currently there because we want to keep that historic value. And there'll be an atrium there, so you'll be able to actually walk through that atrium and go right back to the space you were just at. That takes us to the next slide. This comes all full circle, and this gives you a back-end view of the art center, and that's the front. And the front of the art center would be the startup center incubation. But as you see, green space, nice performance area, people walking, driving, all happening together. Going to the next, which is the aerial view. This shows you how the place is completely open and accessible, not gated away from the African Nova Scotian community. Like many of the other developments sadly that happened in our community over the last however many years. It's not a knock on them, it's just the fact. We have to get better at doing developments in our community that are completely inclusive, and this is what this development is about. It's completely inclusive. That takes me to the construction phase and those opportunity areas. As members of the advisory committee, Juno Development is committed to closing the employment gap and using this site in order to help do so. We have many tools within our repertoire in order to really monitor and provide transparent and real-time impact for this project, as we've been working with some of the best consultants in this country when it comes to creating community benefits agreements with our connection to common good solutions.
Beautiful. Rodney, I know that you still have some remaining slides, but that is time, my friend.
Thank you very much, Kate. If
Thank
we can
you.
kind of just go through the slides briefly at the bottom, I think it's really important to point out our engagements and where they were. So if we can kind of just go through and let the people see
them, absolutely. We'll be clicking through them anyway. So
thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But I want
course.
to point out where the community engagements happen. So you'll see the first one at the Community YMCA, Highland Park, the dates. So you get to see the pictures, the times, the dates. One of the things that I wanted to point out is the graphic facilitation that were taking place in all these conversations. Each one of these graphic facilitations were carried forth to the next conversation to make sure that that voice that we heard from, which was our African Nova Scotian youth, were amplified in a way that was never done before. Thank you very much for your time. Kate, I greatly appreciate you navigating this conversation.
Thank you, Rodney. I appreciate that. I heard someone say that they have a question.
Hello.
Sure.
Hello?
Yeah. Hi. We're just going to review the process for questions, and then we'll take them at the end. Is that cool? Sorry, whoever was asking a question, we're going to review the process for asking questions and public participation right now. And unfortunately, your audio was cut off, just as a heads up. So I want to thank Rodney for the presentation and for being patient with technology. We very much appreciate it. We will now begin the public participation part of the meeting. There are two ways to provide your feedback and ask questions. We have some folks connected by phone who signed up in advance of tonight's meeting to speak. For those viewing the webcast online, you can post comments and questions to the Q&A chat on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a speakers list for those connected via telephone. We will hear from one person at a time. We ask those on the phone to please keep their comments and questions under 5 minutes so everyone has a chance to participate. If you have not registered and would like to call, the number and conference ID are provided on the screen. We'll do our best to accommodate new callers. If you have not registered but would like to call again, like I mentioned, the number is provided right there for you on the screen. The number is 902-901-6948. When I call your name, please select *6 to unmute yourself. It may take a few seconds for you to get connected to the call. We will confirm you're connected before starting your time to speak. And please provide your name and community just for the record. For those watching online, please feel free to type a question in the Q&A on the right side of this online meeting. Planning staff will attempt to and have been answering questions in the Q&A as we've been going along. Unanswered questions may be brought to the presenters after those on the speakers list get a chance to speak. We kindly ask that everyone please respect all points of view and opinions. We'll do our best to respond to as many questions as possible this evening, but if we run out of time, please email your questions and comments to planhrm@halifax.ca. We will be providing a summary of these comments and responses to frequently asked questions after tonight's meeting on the website. Slide 59 or 57, please. Just a reminder that as a part of this consultation process, you can influence things like zoning, land uses, the height of buildings, the preferred community and/or public benefits, and the development approval process. Some of the questions that you can think about might include: do current policies under the center plan reflect your vision of the site? What public and community benefits would you like to see? What land uses and scale of buildings would you support? Do you support the HR2 zone on the site? What development approval process should apply to the site? And what else is important to you? So we have one person that was pre-registered to speak and ask a question, and that's Kathy Legg. I was wondering if Kathy Legg was on the call. We're just in communication with Kathy right now about whether or not she's still on the call. But if you review the Q&A, there are some questions that have popped up, and the planning team is answering them right now.
Hi, Kate. This is Brandon. So we have a few questions from our participants that I'm going to read out for us. So first, Jacqueline asked us a question, will any part of the school remain? And I'll put that question to Kasia, but we responded saying that the former school is not a registered heritage property, so there is no requirement to protect it under current policies, but should the school successfully be registered, the site could be considered a heritage development agreement. So I'll let Kasia expand on that if she wants, or direct us to move on to the next question.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. So the current zoning permits HR1 zoning with a maximum height of 14 meters. I'm sorry, which question are we on right now?
The question is, will any part of the school/schools remain? From Jacqueline.
Right. Okay, my apologies. I was trying to get our speaker on the line when Brad was reading out the question, since we lost her for a second. Well, under the current planning policies, because the building is not a protected heritage building and the overall process is through site plan approval, we do not have a tool to ensure that the building is maintained at the site. If the policies are changed to change them to say development agreement, or if the site gets registered through the heritage registration process, then we would have more tools to incentivize the preservation of the site. But even as a registered heritage building, there's limited ability. I think it's 3 years where buildings cannot be demolished. So this is definitely a great question. Thanks for this question.
Thanks, Kasia. So I'll read out another question we got. So this is a two-part question. The first part was at what stage, related to that, at what stage is the Old North Suburb Heritage Conservation District proposal, and when is approval expected? We answered back here the Heritage Conservation Districts require a separate planning process with a council-initiated staff report. This past week at Regional Council, a priority order was approved for the next 3 Heritage Conservation Districts, with downtown Dartmouth first, Old North Suburb second, and Crichton's Field third. And we directed the participant to connect with us at planhrm@halifax.ca so we could give them a connection with our heritage staff for more information about the HCDs. The next part of that question was, what is SEN2 zoning? Is more intensive than HR zoning, and what exactly is covered by SEN2? So Dali's going to answer that part of the question for us.
So the answer that I provided was with regards to the SEN2 zoning, it is a higher density zone that uses a floor area ratio building regulations and permits a wide range of uses, including residential, commercial, parking, community facility, cultural, institutional, and urban agricultural uses. The site is currently zoned for residential and commercial uses with a height limit of 4 stories. And for detailed information on the difference between SEN2 and other zones within the center plan, there is a link that I provided to our fact sheets that are kind of identify the differences between each zone. And the link to the fact sheet is available in the chat.
So if I could jump in.
There is another question.
Sorry, Dali, I think we may have a caller.
Brandon to ask to put on the next question.
Go ahead, Kash. I'll let you expand on that question.
Yeah, so just basically to highlight that the higher residential zone is typically mostly residential, and the SEN2 zone is one of our most intense zones. It's almost as high intense as a downtown zone. It can create towers and has much more intense commercial uses. So, for example, not just your local commercial grocery store, but could include a bar, restaurant, a much wider commercial uses in the SEN2 zone. And I'm just going to check with Kate whether we have a caller back on or not.
Kathy Legg, are you back on the call?
I
Beautiful.
am. Finally.
Great.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I was concerned about the height application from 4 stories to 12 and the impact on that environmentally and community-wise. I think that's exorbitant. I also have a question about what's happening to the Cobb building. I understand it's going to be somewhat restored, and also I want to know, from what I was able to hear, and I apologize because of the technical difficulties. Where's the consultant information from the Mi'kmaq community?
Okay, thank you very much for these questions, Kathy. And I'm glad, and apologize for the technical difficulties. Glad you were able to join us again. So as I mentioned, I don't know if you heard my presentation, but there's no specific application. It's just a council direction to consider or explore additional height on the site. And so nothing's predetermined, and this is why we have this consultation, the surveys, the pop-ups, and others to see how the community feels about it. Also, given this is a proposed heritage conservation district, we are typically having the heights lower to ensure that that process can go ahead at due time and ensure that new development is respectful of any heritage resources.
I just have a quick another question. What's the tallest building in the area, and how many stories is it within that collective?
Yeah, I think it's those I still remember there was Ocean Towers, the towers across the street. I can confirm that, but I believe they are maybe close to 20 stories, I believe. So they are definitely the only really tall buildings in the area. As you know, the rest of the area is typically more mid-rise to low-rise buildings.
And how long have they been there?
I don't know the exact construction site, but I believe they were built maybe 1970s or 80s, but I don't know the exact.
Yeah, and they're far enough away from the community.
They're set back.
We're talking about this community, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to quickly also question with the Mi'kmaq community. So we've definitely reached out, and we've also worked with Cheryl in our diversity inclusion office to reach out, and we offered to engage. So we are definitely, the invitation was provided, but some of members of the community chose not to participate at this time in this process. But we are still continuously reaching out. In terms of the co-op building, as I said, we don't really have policies in place because site plan approval is as of right process to protect the site. But don't know whether Joe would like to speak to your plans. I believe the intent is to preserve some of the building in the development. Don't know if Joe or Rodney would like to speak to that about plans to maintain some of the site.
Rodney also did want to answer a piece of a question about whether or not any parts of the building will still remain. So I think that ties into this. And so maybe he's able to speak to that a little bit. Rodney, are you still with us?
Perfect. So yes, as you will see in the presentation that we just gave, I'm not sure if obviously with the technical difficulties, whether people seen it or not, but yes, out of good faith and our concern for the environment, we want to find places where we can salvage first and foremost. So we looked very closely at what we could salvage, and yeah, the Brunswick Street building is completely salvageable. So there's not going to be much change to that, but obviously we're going to add the atrium so we make it extremely accessible to the rest of the community. So that's a very important part of this development. 150%. Yes, we want to make sure that we can salvage areas that can be salvaged. And as far as when we talk about the shade on Hope Blooms, because I seen that question, that's exactly why we've taken the time to work with architects to actually really move that building in the way it's moved so that it wouldn't push shade upon Hope Blooms.
Okay, my
and these
question
are things
wasn't
that are
about
good faith,
Hope Blooms.
by the way, right? These are not things that got nothing to do with law and this here zoning, that zoning, nothing to do with that. Out of good faith and doing things from a good place and looking for real impact.
Sorry, Kathy, you had another comment that you were just making?
Oh, I just said I didn't mention Hope Blooms at all, but I am curious about what kind of impact that's going to have on the Dixon Center with environmental, sun, that sort of thing that will impact that particular site.
I'm not sure
if
anyone.
The proposed height of the building, and it's yeah, I just have grave concerns about this whole thing. That's where I'm coming from. So that's where my questions come from.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your questions and concern. And I also was wondering, Rodney, if you could speak to any Mi'kmaq consultation, community consultation that the One North End did.
Well, the vision is in the name, Kate. So One North End, there's no possible way that we would not be connecting with our Indigenous Mi'kmaq brothers and sisters. It's just a part of how we do things. And I am happy to say that Pam, their executive director, she is a representative on the One North End Community Economic Development Society board. I'm not sure about the Dixon question there, but I'm born and raised in the community, and man, I love to see that building, the shade actually go all the way over to the Dixon. I'm just not seeing it because it's just almost 3 blocks away. But in any case, I could understand the concern, but definitely want to point out there's 3 blocks in proximity there, and I'm not sure if that person is familiar with the community, but I am definitely born and raised and frequent all those spaces.
Thank you,
yeah,
Rodney.
I worked in the community for over 25 years, so yeah, I understand it. I get it.
Great. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Rodney. I appreciate both of your comments and sentiments. Kasia, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to address or add, or if we could open the floor back up for some other questions.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you very much, Kathy. Just on a question of shadow, we are not able to evaluate it because we have not received a detailed proposal from the proponents at this time. But maybe Rodney or Joe would like to actually clarify what is the height of the buildings that you indicated in the concept plan for members of the public, because we right now don't have those detailed plans. Maybe that's something you'd like to clarify because it's linked to the shadow question.
Rodney, not sure if you heard that pass off, but Kasia was wondering if you had height for the buildings that you proposed.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So yes, in the project we have very.
Wait, sorry, who is this?
This is Joe Metledge with
Okay, great.
Developments.
Beautiful. Thank you
So
for introducing yourself.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending and taking part in this presentation. And we're really interested to hear the feedback and really excited to show hopefully the vision here that has been really inspired and motivated and shaped by all of the comments and feedback over the last number of years to the One North End and to us at Jono Developments. So to the question on height, the height of the buildings, we have modeled them. They are ranging from 2 stories to 29 stories. And we have modeled and positioned all of the buildings so that there are no shadows. So I guess to the earlier question, absolutely no shadows to the Dixon. There's also no shadows to the park or to Hope Blooms. The angles of the shadows predominantly, because the site runs north-south, we have strategically placed the tower portion of the buildings on the south side, and the tallest building is on the south, which is closest to the round church. That's south, and on the Maitland front. That way, the way that the sun, rotation rising in the east, setting in the west, casts the longest shadow down towards Ocean Tower, and essentially aligns with the existing shadow that Ocean Tower would cast. So we work really closely and hard with the architects to make sure that the buildings, also sort of the images that were shown in the city slide are quite a little bit misrepresenting, because also one of the things that we worked very hard with is the form of the building. So although the buildings are taller, the reason we went with taller buildings is to go with extremely skinny buildings. And what the skinny buildings do is they allow, number one, the shadows to pass quicker, and number two, it allows us to open up the rest of the site. Because one of the important things that we heard and we shared in the vision is the site should be accessible, and the site should be, a center point for the community to get together and interact and do business and play and have fun and live. And the way you do that is to provide open space. And people are really concerned, from what we heard, about what's happening at the pedestrian level. Now, if you go with a 6-story building or a 4-story building, then the entire site gets covered in buildings. There's no room for access for pedestrians, for any of that to happen. So what we do is we try to take that volume, instead of having a wide building and short, we kind of turn it on its side, and that opens up a lot more space for programming of other services and features for the site. So hopefully that answers the questions and the rationale behind it.
Thank you. I was wondering if we had any other call-in questions. If not, I think we could probably return to reading some of the Q&A questions that folks had in the chat.
Thanks, Kate. This is Brandon again with the staff. Just on the shadow question, we have a question from Kevin Cooper on a similar, so I thought we'd provide that question now. So Kevin Cooper asks, will the towers cast a shadow? I just wanted to provide what staff responded in the chat for those listening on the phone. We said in center plan, we designate key parks where development would be required to demonstrate that they don't impact those adjacent parks in terms of shadow. And Murray Warrington Park is one such proposed park. Developments would need to submit a shadow performance protocol to demonstrate their impacts, and we provided a link in the chat to that policy. My colleague Dali is going to read out a couple more questions.
So just to kind of elaborate on Brendan's response.
Here are a couple of questions. Oh, Kesha, go ahead, Kesha. Apologies.
No, just to elaborate on Brendan's answer is essentially we do not have detailed plans at this time, and we will not know exactly the shadows until the detailed application is submitted and the performance shadow is submitted as well. So just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you. Sorry, over to you, Dali.
Okay, perfect. So the question that we had also is, what is the developer allowed to build right now under the current HR1 zoning? How many apartments? How much retail space? Why do they think they need to build more than this? So my response was thank you for the question, and I think it's an important question to for both the presenter Kasha and also the property owner to respond to. So Kasha, if you'd like to respond to the question, and also I believe either Rodney or Joe to respond to the question as well.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So this is Joe again. So currently we are allowed to build under the HR zoning that is on the site, essentially 6 buildings which would occupy approximately 90% of the site, if not more. And although we haven't done a detailed study on exactly what that translates into units, we estimate there'd probably be around 700 or so units, 750 perhaps. And to answer your question regarding why do we feel we need to build more, to be honest with you, we don't. You know, one of the things that you know, we want to make perfectly clear is, you know, as private developers, as a family-owned business, you know, what we can do on this site tomorrow is very economically achievable, very cost-effective. 4-story buildings can be built out of wood. They're significantly cheaper than building concrete, because both wood is cheaper than concrete, and it's cheaper to build a low-rise building than a high-rise building. So, you know, from a profit perspective, what we can do on this site and what we've been able to do on this site for the last year and a half or so, from a business perspective, makes perfect sense to us. But, you know, we are from Halifax. You know, my father immigrated here. We're Lebanese descent. Myself and my partner, Norman Nahas, we're both Lebanese. Our fathers both immigrated from Lebanon during the war in a vessel and landed here in Halifax on these shores with no money, no language, no education, and came up from nothing 50 years ago. So, you know, we've been blessed and fortunate enough to work hard, and our fathers and our families have worked hard, and we have been given opportunities through our initiative and sheer determination, and are now finally in a position where we're looking back and we're saying, how can we create a legacy, and how can we really make a positive impact in this city? How can we use our influence and our privilege and our blessings, if you will, to try to make a positive difference? So, when we came across the One North End and we met Rodney, and he started talking to us about the community benefit agreement and really educating us about how that works. A lot of what we heard also aligned with a lot of what we were hearing from the community, which frankly aligned with a lot of what we believe ourselves. There isn't a conflict. There is not, unfortunately, the way the system is set up, it tends to, pit community against developer and developer against community. And, Norm and I just refuse to look at things that way. From our perspective, we said, we're facilitators. We're people who build buildings. We don't make money off building buildings. We make money off people choosing to occupy these buildings. And so it makes sense when you're building in a community to try to build something that is going to be the most beneficial for wherever that building is going to be built. The other thing is we are long-term owners. We own the properties and we hold on to them for 40, 50 years. We don't flip. So we're not looking to just come in here, build something, sell it off and leave. We're members of the community everywhere that we go and everywhere that we build. And we plan to be here for, as long as we can be.
Great.
So to answer your question though, I just want to give you a little bit of history of where this came from. So now to answer the question, what we try to do is find a way to reshape what would be able to be built. Because let's face it, every great initiative that we all want to see happening on this site and the community wants to see and we want to see cost money. So the question is, where's that money going to come from? And, that money has to come from the ability to design a complex that provides enough density that justifies the investments into these, what should be, frankly, responsibilities of the government, but unfortunately have just never transpired. So if we're going to try to download these to a private individual or a private company, then we have to find a way that it doesn't hurt us, as the developer. And it shouldn't hurt us as a developer. I don't think you guys want that, and we don't want that. So what we've tried to do is design a program and design a site that allows enough lift from what we could do to what we're presenting here to justify that additional costs that would be associated with the African Nova Scotian Entrepreneur Center or the Arts Center, or designing a building that would hold the proper footprint, because they're very specific designs and specifications required for proper grocery stores. I know we had the Carrot in the North End, and that didn't really last too long, but to get like a Sobeys or a Loblaws, you have to have specifically purpose-built buildings. And those all chew up area differently than a traditional building. So we really studied this thing really closely to find out how can we do this, and we started with what the deliverables are, and then we designed the buildings and the density of the site to reflect those deliverables. And the one thing I want to be very transparent and open about is that's how this package is. It's, we can't pick and choose. Well, if we do pick and choose, I guess what I'm saying is, if we pick and choose, if you take something, you're going to lose something. And if you give something, you're going to gain something. So what we tried to do is work closely with the One North End and other stakeholders that we have spoken to over the years to really hone in on what are the key fundamental asks. And we feel like, and we hope that we've captured that, and we're all aligned on this proposal together.
Thank you for your comments. I really appreciate them. I know that folks are appreciative that you're here to give some insight. I also don't want to skip over the fact that we have a few questions that could probably be answered within the live Q&A. Brandon, I'm not sure if you'd like to handle those.
Yep, so we've got a few more questions to get through. Thanks for all the detail. The next question that came in, Kasia, I'll direct this to you. Some of the questions that are coming live now, we're just going to answer them live if we can. So the this last question said, all discussion seems to be based on by right or as of right zoning change. How are community benefit agreements enforced without a discretionary approval process or some other contractual agreement? So they said, apologies if this was already addressed, but I don't think we have spoken about this. So Kasia, if you could speak to this a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this question. So as I mentioned in my presentation, and perhaps I should mention it again, under planning regulations or planning law within the HRM Charter, the municipality is only given certain tools to enforce public benefits, and this is actually still a fairly recent tool in HRM, the bundle zoning agreement, which once negotiated can be placed on land if there are specific things provided in exchange for higher development rights. So say it's a heritage preservation or public art or community space, this would be in a bundle zoning agreement and placed on title. So it runs with the land. It is not reliant on the property owner. If the property ever gets sold, those agreements run with the land. And similar in development agreements, we're able to sometimes negotiate certain things through development agreements, and those also run with the land. And should there be a question, then the municipality has a way of enforcing those agreements, make sure that that happens. And another way is through central plan, because enforcement is still challenging with things like affordable housing, for example. The way the central plan structured that is through accepting or requiring money in lieu of the public benefits at the time of development permits. So at the time that the property owner applies for permits, they would be required to pay the public a calculated set based on the formula amount of money that is then placed in the reserve and then can be distributed through various grants to achieve those public benefits. So that's under the charter, and we have limited tools. So other cities may have other tools that may allow more three-way party agreements with community organizations, but this is not currently enabled under the HRM Charter. Don't know whether, so I hope that answers the question. There is work that's going on, and it's this is something that the municipality is aware of, and we are trying to work on it and perhaps achieve extra tools. Council also approved recently a social procurement policy, which allows on our land to perhaps have additional community social benefits, but where it's private land, those options are limited.
Thanks, Kasia. So I think that our next question is about, one of the comments is asking if staff could answer a bit more on what HR1 implies for the site. So the comment was, need HRM to answer a question on what they can build with HR1. So if you could provide a few more details about the current zoning on the site. I think you're still muted.
Thank you for this question. So all of the permitted uses by zone are listed in Table 1 of the Land Use Bylaw for those who are really keen to open up the Land Use Bylaw. So there is a wide range of options for residential uses. So everything from single unit dwelling uses through to semi-detached dwellings, townhouses, 2 and 3 units, and of course multi-unit dwellings as well. There is also permissions for bed and breakfasts, home occupations, home offices, work-live units, grade-related units. So that these are entries from the sidewalk, for example, within a larger multi-unit dwelling. The commercial uses include catering, daycares, local commercial uses, so personal services such as haircutting, barbershops, or spas, for example, and workshop uses. There could also be under institutional uses, of course, urban agriculture is permitted, but also cultural uses, emergency services, medical clinics, religious institutions, and even schools should also be required. Could be private schools, for example. and any kind of parks and open spaces uses would also be permitted. So it's a fairly broad zone, but the commercial uses, you wouldn't be seeing bars, for example, or something that may be open, late in the evening. So it's kind of tries to respect the residential nature of the zone. Hope this answers the question. Is there another one?
Yeah, thanks, Kasia. We have quite a few questions still, so I think the next ones are about the scale of the buildings that are in the one North End and Joe's proposal. So I think I'll pass them to you and then you can direct them on as you wish. So the one question asks, how will the actual heritage sites existing on Brunswick Street be incorporated? The question lists the Little Dutch Church, St. Pat's, and St. George Round Church. The one proposal showed high-rise buildings directly adjacent to the historic Round Church and directly across the street from St. Pat's. And as well, I think in the same question, in the following question, they ask about the wind tunnel effect of tall, skinny buildings and how that impacts our city and potentially making it really unpleasant to walk or bike in. So I guess the two questions are about the scale of the buildings adjacent to heritage, and then the scale of the buildings as far as they impact wind tunnel effects on pedestrians and cyclists. So I'll direct that to you, Kasia, and then we can pass it on if we want.
Okay, I can probably answer the question. So Center Plan has another, what we call performance standard. In addition to the shadow performance standard, there's also a wind performance standard. So any building of a certain height, I believe over 20 meters, is required to also do a wind study, which then tests the impact of the height of the buildings on the pedestrian realm in particular. So around the where pedestrians are expected to walk or sit. And there are different performance standards, and thus would have to be mitigated before the final proposal is accepted. With respect to heritage, given that this property is adjacent to two provincially registered heritage buildings, the St. George's Church and St. Patrick's Church in particular across the street, as part of site plan approval, there are specific heritage design requirements that adjacent buildings would have to respect. So this is something the heritage planners can speak to in more detail than I do, but there is a number of heritage specific design requirements that would have to also be met in terms of being complementary to the heritage context and being within the scale. So without having a detailed application, we can't really comment on it, but it would really depend on, it would be a conversation between planning staff and heritage planning staff as well.
Maybe I could speak to the proposal that were, so, okay,
sure.
So to start with, I guess on the wind, of course, wind is a serious concern for everyone, including us as the property owners. Because again, we need it to be a pedestrian-friendly address if we're going to have people hanging around and living there and shopping and doing business there. So you'll see, if you can slide, Kate, would you mind switching to slide 42? If that's possible.
Is there another question from Dali or Brendan?
Sorry, I'm trying to just get everybody to see the screen because it'll be easier for them. But and anyway, if you can get to slide 42, if not, the towers are set in. So how we've designed the proposal is we actually have larger. When I say larger, I mean wider podiums, which go up 3 and 4 stories. And then inside the center sort of the podiums is where the towers come up. So as the pedestrians walking and interacting and living and shopping and playing on the site, you won't really see or feel the towers, because what will be you will be interacting with really is going to be a shorter podium building of townhouses on the facade. And then set back far away from the street and the side yards would be the towers. With respect to the round church, if we could get to page 42, you'll see we've actually set the building quite far from the property line that abuts between our property and the round church. And we've actually indented, so we've curved the building in the same circumference as the curve of the round church. So it almost looks like the round church itself could fit. If you slid it over, it would slide sort of right into the indentation of the building. So we've looked at and really paid as much respect and attention to the architectural features of the buildings around us. With respect again to St. Patrick's Church, with consultation from them, the school facade on Brunswick Street was extremely important, and we agreed. And so we worked really hard to try to incorporate the facade of that building as really the key entry point to what would be a pedestrian access throughout the site. So if you see through the renderings, you'll see that the facade of that building is retained and rehabilitated. And different canopies and overhangs are established throughout the site in order to protect pedestrians from any wind that would be created from high-rise buildings. And everything I'm sort of saying right now, we have done shadow studies internally. And so that's just how I can tell you guys about the shadow transportation. We have not done full wind impact studies. However, we would be obviously doing that as we develop the designs further, but based on best practices and the architects' experiences, we have positioned the buildings in ways that we're confident right off the bat from what we're showing is well over 90% achieving what it would need to achieve. As we would do the studies, if we found certain hot spots on the site that a wind tunnel or a downdraft from wind could be caused, we would obviously take measures of wind screening to eliminate that.
Okay, so the next, I'm just going down the list here. So the next question I see that hasn't been answered yet is the concept plan shows only the facade left of the old Cobb School. And the questioner asked if we could get clarification on this from the developer. So I guess they're just wondering if it's just the facade that's preserved in your proposal.
So we looked at the, when we did a study on the site, we looked at the full old boys school in a way to try to preserve the entire school itself and repurpose it. One of the iterations we went through was creating almost like lofts. The challenge that we faced is when it came to accessible housing. And we recognized, the more units that can get put into an area is, basic supply and demand. As supply goes up, demand will go down. As demand goes down, price goes down. So, a big driver was to keep the unit counts as high as possible. Because the school is pushed so far back into the site, the area that we were able to achieve by repurposing the school in its current configuration amounted to about 45 apartments. However, the area that it took up of the actual site chewed up about 120 equivalent apartments in space. And so there was a huge loss of opportunity in being able to get more units on this site. And so what we did is we retained, also in consultation with local historians and members of the community, that it was really the facade of the church that was important. That was what really created that nostalgic memory as you walk by or drive by or interact with the site. It's really when you look, that's what you see. And so what we were able to do is or at least the plan will be to rehabilitate the facade and then have that as the face of the podium to which we would then step the towers behind and then be able to recapture that density.
Thanks for that. I'm going to pass it to Dali now to ask the next question.
So the next question is, besides the one north end, who have the developers met with in terms of community? So I'm not sure if whether Rodney or Joe would like to answer this question.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we've met. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to reach out to as many people in the community as we could. And so the first thing that we had done was we reached out to Councillor Lindell Smith, and we really looked to him as guidance to sort of help us navigate through the community at the early days of our attempt to go through a consultation. So we have met with the YMCA. I'll leave particular names out, but representatives from the community who work in the YMCA right in the community. Also, members of the community within the library. We work with Love, with Hope Blooms. We've met with Dr. Casey, Reverend Britton. We've met with and spoke to the Friendship Center, with St. Pat's Church. And with each group and with each person that we would meet, we would ask them, who else should we be speaking to? And could you share this information with us so that we could reach out to as many people as possible? And then Rodney from One North End was a name that we were shared to. And so we reached out to Rodney. And then we have been working with Rodney. And Rodney, you're welcome to jump in here if you'd like, and really talk about the collaborative consultation that we've been doing together through your leadership and sort of feeding it back to us for information.
Rodney, I'm not sure if if you're still on the line.
Yes, please. Yes, I am still here. Thank you, Joe. That really appreciate listening to you the last little bit there for sure. When we approached all of our engagements in the community, it was around the notion of gentrification. So whenever we did our conversations, it was from the perspective of the displacement of Blackness that has been literally a long history within Halifax. So we wanted to make sure that when we were having these conversations, that the new developments that were coming into our community were well aware of these conversations and engagements that we were having. So all of our engagements, as you've seen in the presentation, were very much open to the public. We started with our youth. When I say our youth, our most vulnerable voice, once again, we carried those conversations out from our youth and had conversations in our parent resource centers. We went from our parent resource centers and to open space with more of our homeowners and our elders. And then we went from there to our business and nonprofit community, creating a very plenary space. So the dialogue was very open around the gentrification that is currently taking place in the north end of Halifax and how we could actually rebuke that in a way that actually supported the long-withstanding community members where displacement has been a long part of their history, and we need to look no farther than Africville.
Thank you, Rodney, for that additional information. So the next on the list here is a comment that says, I do not believe that the developer's assertion about how many units they could build on this site tomorrow is true. Part of this is a park. I think they're trying to emotionally manipulate the public during this consultation by implicitly threatening the community with how much worse of a development they could build. So that's a comment that we received. Our next question I'll let Dali read out, and it's related to affordable housing.
So the question is, how much of this low rise will be designated to affordable housing? As a developer, it is a priority of yours to have the community reflected in the building or simply fill in units? That's the question.
Joe, I'm not sure if you would like to take that question on or if you're still with us on the line.
So perhaps what I would recommend maybe that for the affordable housing component, Maybe Kasha can speak to the affordable housing regulations in the center plan, and then perhaps Joe can speak to the remaining of the questions.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dolly.
Sure. So under center plan, 60% of any bonus zoning value must be dedicated to affordable housing, either new or renovations to existing nonprofit housing. However, given the challenges of enforcing affordable housing units, and that because we are still as a municipality quite new to this, under central plan right now, the value has to be provided as cash on you or money at the time of development permit. This money will then be deposited into this reserve and then provided as grants to nonprofit housing. So there's no requirement under current rules to provide affordable housing on site. There is a requirement, however, to provide a range of unit mixes, both 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units on the site. So maybe I can go back to Joe if he's able to unmute and speak to the question from his perspective.
Sure. So under this, well, I guess to comment on your, sorry, I'm reading some of the comments here. So on the affordable housing, again, we have come up with sort of a different way to look at things, because one of the things that we've seen as developers is frankly a huge need for affordable housing. And frankly, the government has not found a way to come up with a proper solution. And so, you know, as family business, we decided let's try to come up with a solution that will work. And so what we're proposing is that the property taxes that would be generated from this site would be fully calculated in their full amount, and that we would pay that money to either a local nonprofit housing or community group that would then use their local knowledge of the community and the community's needs to administer the actual needs of the time. So, you know, if there's $1 million a year in property taxes, which depending on the size of the project, it could be anywhere from $1 to $3 million a year in property taxes that we would have to pay. Instead of paying that to the city and that money gets kicked up to the province, and then the province sort of spends that money wherever and however they want, that money would be paid to a fund. That fund would go to a local group, and that group would administer and find out who needs how much. Because the challenge with affordable housing is, you know, it's very quick and easy to put the responsibility or try to put the responsibility on the end provider, us as the business owner. The problem is the Nova Scotia Power, Halifax Water are two major expenses in operations. They do not give us a break. They don't discount their rates. The city, with their taxes, their building fees, their building permits, and all of the costs that they add to the project, they don't assist either. And so the cost to operating a project is something that, you know, whether we do affordable housing or do for-profit housing isn't going to change. And like we said, we do not want a project that is going to look nice and shiny day one, and then 5 years later, it's running down because there's not enough money to keep up with the upkeep and the looks of the site. Plus, there's profit that has to be made, guys. You know, I'm not going to shy away for 1 second, and I don't think anybody here would want me to, and I don't think you would want it for yourself. We're family businesses. We're not getting any money from the government. We're not getting any assistance from anybody. This is family money that we literally would be putting our entire life savings and everything that we have by ourselves. Every penny that will be going into this project will be our pennies going into this project. And so we have to make a profit. And I, you know, I want that to be clear to everybody. I'm not going to shy away from that. Without a profit, there's no way for us to do this. I mean, nobody on the call does anything for no profit. We all have to work, and we all have to make a return for what we're doing and the risks that we're taking on. So the model of take the money out of our profits doesn't work. But what would work, and the model that we think would work, is take the money that is already coming out as an expense to us in property taxes and let that money get spent back in the community. Now, people might choose to live in our property, and that's great if they do. But guess what? If they don't, that money is still there, that they can live anywhere in the neighborhood. They don't have to live in our building. They can live where they're currently living. If they need assistance, if they need $500 a month, $1,000 a month, however much they need a month in order to make the cost of the housing in their area accessible, that is what would be administered by this nonprofit. So it's a little bit of a different concept on how we want to approach affordable and accessible housing. And it's one that we're confident will work as long as the government agrees to cooperate, because the government is the one who holds the key to facilitating this.
Thank
we
you.
As the owners are willing and prepared to take that model. And from what we've heard from community is their willingness and excitement for a model like that to be put in place, because it puts the power and the money back in the community to be administered by the community. But we need the third share to be filled by the government.
Thank you for explaining that. There are just two comments that I wanted that are directly linked to the conversation topic, and then I would like to pass it over to Kasia to explain a little bit. So the last two comments in relationship to what you just said were cash in lieu has not been working for us, the residents of this city, and we don't want you to donate money to a local group. We want affordable housing. I don't know if from a planning perspective, Kasia, you had any additional comments or thoughts?
Sure, thank you very much for this. So this is a brand new program, only since really September 2018 when the plan got approved. We started collecting, really it's only been very recently we started collecting money, so it's new, and I know that previously grants from the municipality has been quite limited. So we're hoping that this program can result in more significant grants that can then also leverage other funding from the provincial, federal government, or even the private sector. But it is a brand new program, so it has been untested so far, and we're hopeful this will actually make a difference. And as you know, there are some kind of new and exciting programs being announced by the federal government recently. The most recent was the Rapid Housing Initiative that both nonprofits and private developers can access. So there are opportunities for private owners to tap into both provincial and federal funding. I did want to make a quick comment on the issue of property taxes. I think, you know, we're always exploring new ways of funding housing. It's urgently needed and long overdue. However, under our legislation, the municipality only is able to waive property taxes or reduce property taxes to nonprofit organizations and charitable organizations, and we are not able to do that for private developments. And as you know, taxes pay for a range of services in the city, but so just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kasia. Our next question comes from Paula in the list. So she, it's a comment on a question. She says, Scotian Street and this whole area is very unique in its streetscape and the way it looks. I live here and moved here because it was close to downtown, but had a small community feel. It's disturbing to me that there could be high-rise buildings just down the street. It would ruin the look of our community. If the zoning changes for this development, will the door be wide open for all other developments, such as the parking lot at the other end of Maitland? So Kasia, I'll put that to you, and if you could explain what this would imply for the zoning in the surrounding community, or what we have planned there.
Thank you for this question again. So given that this request is being considered in the context of the larger planning process, and we always look at the surrounding context and distribution of growth. So under Central Plan urban structure, going back 5 years, the Scotian Street area was identified as the key main commercial center of the community. So we would want to see more mid-rise. It's still not really towers, but mid-rise, tall mid-rise buildings on Scotian Street and tapering down towards the more historic part of the area and Maitland Street. And this is again linked to transportation links, being able to service high density development, as we know the streets are quite narrow on Brunswick and Maitland. So that's also a consideration. So it's not to say that we want that change in this area would have domino effect, but it may down the road, I suppose. So we are mindful of that, and we are looking at how does development transition, both in the form, the height of buildings, and also the kind of land uses, commercial, residential, from the kind of commercial center of Scotian Street and down towards Brunswick Street, which is has long been recognized as a heritage streetscape and is also proposed to become the Old Suburb Heritage Conservation District. So it's definitely something that we're looking at very carefully.
There was a new phone number that joined us, and I just wanted to check in to see if they had any comments or questions. I know that it's a little bit harder to engage via phone, so I just wanted to open the floor to them. The phone number is 425-37. I don't want to read the last two digits if I can help it, but I don't know if you are here with a question or you're just here to join us.
Hi, my name is Melinda Day, and I was attending another meeting prior to this, so I'm glad that I am able to join. And I'm
welcome, Melinda.
Hi, I'm joining late, but I do want to just right now just kind of listen. I'm sorry that I had to miss the first part of the meeting, but I do want to just now listen. As you know, I've been very much involved, along with many others on the line here tonight, in terms of St. Pat's, Alexandra, the City Hall, and Juneau, and the whole bit. So I am very, very much interested, and please allow me to just listen. And if I do want to share something, I know how to go about doing that. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that you were able to engage and unmute and say whatever you needed to say.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you.
So Kate, cut us off whenever you need to, but we'll try and read through as many questions as we can. The next one on the list is a bit of a comment on a question. So the developer's answer about what is allowed as of right is evasive. Can the HRM planner please respond? I would assume they have done some basic allowance. Can't believe you can cover 90% of site as the developer says. That doesn't happen anywhere. It is very unclear that what can be done with HR1. And so I think to combine that with one of the next comments, they ask if there could be mixed housing. So in the HR1 zone, so we maybe could talk about the unit mixes in HR1 zone as well as a bit more detail for HR1, Kasia.
Sure. We haven't done any detailed modeling. We can go back and look. We did some basic modeling, which we can go back and maybe post on site in terms of estimated potential. I don't have this in front of me, unfortunately, but it's difficult to really know unless you have a detailed application to exactly know how many units and how much of the site would be covered, because there are landscaping requirements, there are amenity space requirements, which can be provided both inside and outside the buildings, and that could result in more open space. Of course, there are setbacks and from the buildings, and also a 6-meter setback from the park as a minimum, and from the street. So yeah, it would definitely, don't know whether it would be 90%. It's difficult to estimate, but we don't have the unit counts from the as a right scenario. It would really depend on the number of factors, including how much amenity space will be provided, mandatory amenity space provided inside the building, on the rooftop, or at the ground level as open space. In terms of the unit mix, there is in HR1 zone, the minimum requirement is 25% of units have to be 2-bedroom units, and 10% in addition to that would have to be 3-bedroom units under the current Package A regulations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kasia. So the next question that we have is, in some jurisdictions, big increases in development rights require sharing a pro forma. Can the developer share the pro forma to justify the proposed ask, and show how ask how much for any lift in right is balanced with the benefit proposed? Not sure if John, you'd like to answer this question. Okay. Hello?
It's okay if that question is missed.
Okay.
We can also
no worries. We can move to the next. Yeah, we can move to the next question. Let me see. There are also a couple of other questions too that as a follow-up to what is permitted under the HR1 zoning, and we've already covered that. Another question is, will there be non-market housing included in this development to ensure it's affordable and accessible? That would fix the supply and demand unit problem that the developer is talking about. Can the developer make a commitment to include non-market housing rather than being able to simply pay a fee so they don't have to provide for affordable housing? Also, I believe that's also tied to the affordable housing component. And I think how short we are on time, I'm just going to go through the follow-up question, and I think it's important to note that all of these questions are going to be available online as well. The ones that we have not been able to necessarily answer, that they will be available and we'll provide an answer to. So the next comment, I believe it's a mix of a comment and a question. Still trying to understand total site density under the HR1. Yes, 4 floors, but you can't cover the whole site with one building. What are the setbacks between buildings, lot coverage ratios, open space amenity requirements? Someone needs to assess what can be built under the HR1 zone and show what this looks like before the developer throws it away and goes for HR2. The center plan isn't even done yet, and they want to change it. This seems, this is same old school planning that HRM has been doing for years.
And I think, Kasia, before you speak to that question a little bit, our final comment so far is on a similar line and says, so HRM has no idea what can be built with HR1 and yet is putting forward a proposed change to HR2. Unbelievable, don't they have architects at HRM? So I'll open that up to Kasia to speak a bit more to if she can add any more detail to the HR1.
Thank you for this question. We are still early in the process, so it's not that we are advocating for HR2. This was something that we're going to look at, and as part of staff report, that we will be doing more detailed assessment, and that can be included in future information online. But we will probably speak to that as we get closer to make a recommendation to council. So this is really part of the public consultation process, and we're still fairly early into that. So thanks for the comment.
We'll be reviewing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to wrap up, I think we've read through any of the comments and questions we have so far, but for the full complete details about all of these zones, I would suggest visiting centerplan.ca. In our fact sheets, we can find the comprehensive list of details for each zone at that site, but I'll turn it over to Kate. That's the end of our comments and question and answer section.
Beautiful, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I do want to thank everyone for their feedback, insight, questions, comments. We really do appreciate folks taking the time to be here with us. There will be a recording available in case you joined the meeting late. And you can stay in conversation by participating in an online survey at www.centerplan.ca. Paper copies are also available at the North Branch Library. You can send comments to planhrm@halifax.ca until December 15th. You can request a small stakeholder meeting. You can get added to the CenterPlan email list for updates, and you can come out to the CenterPlan public hearing, and the dates to be determined for sometime in the fall of 2021. The Regional Council will ultimately make the decision about development policies for the site, but we would encourage you to follow the process. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you again, and here's where you can find more information and HRM's email address. I really hope that everyone has a safe and wonderful evening. Thank you.